Welcome to the show. It's going to be a cool show tonight. We dealing with Pan-African history, pre-Garvey series, where we get into some information that you can get from the so-called conscious community going back before Garvey. This is your brother, the Digital Pit Boss. We rocking with the Fraternal Order of Pan-Africanism tonight. Y'all make sure y'all support the channel, brothers. Get out there, sisters, get out there. Show your brothers some love. I'm on my side net begging routine right now. And, hit that PayPal link. It helps out for the elevation of the channel. So let's get down to business. As y'all see, we got the Fraternal Order of Pan-African flag. And we're going to be talking about W.E.D. Du Bois, the man who is not Pan-Africanism, according to me. So let's get that out the way, right? Knock that out. So, as I always do, I got to make a quick grab of the on my chat box, I got to say what's up. Look at my man, David. Boy, David, you be on it. David, what the heck? You be the first one in the room, huh? That's what's up, man. Appreciate you supporting the channel. I hope you enjoy the information that I'm bringing. Y'all have any questions coming into the room, just drop me a question in the room as we go along. I'm going to check back with the chat, the chat room here and there, right? So I just grabbed a quick little couple pages so we can narrate this story. Now, we're going to show you a big picture real quick before I even get started. Let's get this picture on the screen, right? As you see here, this is the members of the NIAGARA movement. They put this together. They put the NIAGARA movement together around 1904, 1905. And the leader of the pack, our man, W.D. Du Bois. W.D. Du Bois would be a man who would, in the future, after this movement, would go on to head the NAACP. This is your early stage of the civil rights movement. Civil rights movement believed in fighting for civil rights for Americans, Black African Americans. That would be the aim of their focus. They would ultimately take that fight into the, like we said, the NAACP and push that all the way to Martin Luther King and everybody in between. And eventually they got their civil rights movement. And we're living in that civil rights integration period. So ask yourself, how well do you like it? In contrast to this civil rights movement of the NIAGARA movement, we have none other than Booker T. Washington himself, whom I have championed as the greatest Black man in our time in these Northern American. Booker T. Washington was the unofficial Black president of the world. During his time on the planet, he was probably the most powerfulest man, Black, in the world. No equivalent. He operated the Tuskegee Institute. And W.D. Du Bois had an issue with him. And his vocational, as he called it, program. And his, he called Booker T. Washington an accommodationist in his book, in his 1903 book, The Souls of Black Folks. He writes an article in there. We're going to read about that in this little article here. This first article I'm going to present is just going to share a simple narrative with us. So let's go ahead and read a little bit. Somebody said I sound like Terrence Howard on my last one. You know, I got to put a little acting on the voice or something, you know. It's late night. I'm chilling in my chair, lean back. Got a little cup of lemon water. I won't drink too much. Don't want to smack in y'all face. If y'all want to find this particular page, I'm just on blackpast.org. You know what I mean? Y'all can always Google what you hear my titles are about. Just see what you find, right? I'm just using them as a navigation as I break down what's going on here. So let's start the reading off. And it says the NIAGARA movement was a civil rights group organized by W.D. Du Bois and William Monroe Trotter in 1905. After being denied admittance into the Hotel of Buffalo, New York, the group of 29 business owners, teachers, and clergies were comprised to the initial meeting gathered at the Niagara Falls, from which the group derives its name. The principles behind the NIAGARA movement was largely in opposition to Booker T. Washington's philosophy of accommodationism. Now, whenever you hear this word accommodationism, this is a doublespeak word. See, the Black Power movement of today, the real Black Power movement, the one that's really understand this history, not these lumpy gumpies that's running around today yelling out Black Power, holding up a socialism ideology under the auspices of Black nationalism. One is not the same. So that's just like a code word for being a sucker. It was kind of like a derogatory word, as you know. Booker T never really considered himself an accommodationist, but rather he just looked at the civil rights movement as not the way for Black people to gain economic independence or independence outside of these white folks. As we are the evident, and we're able to look back, we're able to see how we are living today to realize who was right and who was wrong. Mind you, W.D. Du Bois admitted long in his life, somewhere in the 60s, 1960s, that he was wrong for going up against Booker T and Marcus Garvey. But you know what this series is about. This is pre-Marcus Garvey, so we're not really speaking on Marcus Garvey. Love him a lot, appreciate his effort, but y'all don't learn nothing if I don't get in before him. So let me continue to read. Trotter, the editor of the Boston Guardian, had publicly reprimanded Washington at a Boston, Massachusetts meeting in 1903. See, they already going at him. In The Souls of Black Folks in 1903, Du Bois had also condemned Washington for his lowered expectations of African Americans. The NIAGARA movement drifted a declaration of principles, part of which stated, "We refuse to allow the impressions to remain that the Negro American assent to inferiority is submissive under the oppression and apologetic before insults." The NIAGARA movement attempted to bring about legal change addressing the issues of crime, economics, religion, health, and education. The movement stood apart from the other Black organizations at the time because of its powerful, unequivocal demands for equal rights. The NIAGARA movement forcefully demanded equal economics and education opportunities, as well as the vote for Black men and women. Members of the NIAGARA movement sent a powerful message to the entire country through their condemnation of racial discrimination and their call for an end to segregation. So now, the NIAGARA movement wanted to end segregation. Segregation was the key that developed Black Wall Street. It was the fact that segregation was a law in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where it gave the Black folks no other opportunity but to do for self, being that they were segregated from the society, right? The fact that we have integration today is the very means why we can't gather ourselves together as Black folks and control our neighborhoods. because the moment a black man gets him a little money, he moves out to Beverly Hills somewhere, might move out to Miami, Florida, or, you know, Buckhead somewhere. And, you know, his money is not invested in his community, and therefore weakening the strength of the community. So see, you got some folks with this very same ideology yelling out black power, but in reality, they ain't nothing but civil rights leaders out marching for civil rights while they're yelling black power. If you want black power, you got to do for self. You got to build something for yourself. You got to segregate yourself from the rest of society in the aspect of how you do your economics. That don't mean you got to move up out your quaint, cozy home that you're living in. It just simply means you got to segregate your money. That's the way you move. That's how you get it done. Let's finish reading this little article. It says, while the movement had grown to include to 170 members in the 34 states by 1906, it also encountered difficulties. W.D. Du Bois supported the inclusion of women in the NIAGARA movement. William Monroe Trotter did not. Trotter left the movement in 1908 to start his own group, the Negro American Political League. You ever heard of that? Well, it sure wasn't black power. It sure wasn't black power, right? The NIAGARA movement met annually until 1908. In that year, a major race riot broke out in Springfield, Illinois. 8 blacks were killed. Over 2,000 African Americans fled the city. Symbolically important because it was the first Northern race riot for decades, and because it was in the hometown of Abraham Lincoln, black and white activists, including members of the NIAGARA movement, felt the new, more powerful interracial organization was now needed to combat racism. Out of that, what it says, out of this concern, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, was formed. The NIAGARA movement was considered a precursor to the NAACP, and many of its members, such as W.D. Du Bois, were among the new organization founders. All right, so now understand this. Du Bois picks up an ideology that he found from a white guy that is referred to as the talented 10th. He made this ideology popular, stating that 10% of the educated black folks, they would make all the decisions for the totality of the 90% or the 100%, including themselves. This was opposite what Booker T. Washington was talking about. Washington was talking about educating all 100% to be masters of the universe in the aspect of a technical degree. Now, nowadays, you find the groups like Asians, or they wouldn't agree with Booker T. Washington's. They wouldn't agree with W.D. Du Bois' literary art program for their children. Oh no. The Asians is studying technical degrees. They're in there coding computers. They're in there building programs, and they're becoming engineers and mathematicians. They're into the computer science. They're into building an education that operates in economic upliftment. Sorry about that. Give me a second. Okay. So, in saying all of this, because we have all these years to look back at what was taking place, it's kind of plain to see that the reality is the civil rights movement didn't turn out to be a good thing. So as I get into this next page, where I'm going to dig in a little deeper to this particular situation, this was just a quick outline just for y'all who may have heard of the NIAGARA movement for the first time, because these so-called RBG, comedic RBGs, they ain't gonna talk about pre-Garvey. So I'm doing this series over a period of time. I ain't gonna just do it consecutively. I'm just gonna pick out different points, things I've been teaching in the Fraternal Order of Pan-Africanism for years. But now I'm doing it on video so you guys can join in into the lessons. I've already covered all this stuff before. But because, you know, I get hated by all the popular channels, they rather bring on these same old dudes to regurgitate the same information we done already heard. I took note. When I started my group, I decided that I would come down a lane that they're not teaching in the conscious community. Why should I come in and teach the same thing that someone's already teaching? That wouldn't be beneficial to the whole. So let's get in a little bit deeper to this W.D. Du Bois and his de facto group, the NIAGARA movement. So in this particular piece, we still covering the same information. We just going in, dissecting just a little bit deeper. And okay, now see, I just had that marked. And with my little best of luck, I went on, hit that button and jumped off my little spot. I'll find it right back though. It wasn't nothing too hard to find. Let me find it. Okay, hold on real quick. Go back up to the top. Let's start this over again. I had a specific location I wanted to start from. I mean, here we go. We're right back. We're just a little bit into the page. Don't worry about it. I'll put these links for y'all to do more in-depth reading after I see y'all support the channel, after I do all this research. But I'm going to put these links inside my description box after the show. And I see people commenting for me to do that. So, you know, I do want y'all to get the information, join in with me. So in the future, when I put the link out, y'all can come on in and have some conversations on this ideology with me and explain, you know, to me how we can use this information to make an improvement on our group economics that we should be applying today. So before I start this, I'm gonna just say a little commercial for myself. So, you know, I'm really trying to get y'all to support me. I'm not just begging for money. I got 1,000 ways to get money. It's just y'all don't see the behind the scenes of what I do to make all of this stuff happen. So y'all can go to DPB Studios on Facebook, join my little design page on there. You can write me, tell me how I can utilize my STEM skills over here together with something you may got going on. Maybe we develop some designs, maybe we create some products. This is the type of thing that they was doing in Black Wall Street. They was coming together with various skills and building up a city where they can employ their own and live in the kingdom that they built right here on earth. Now, mind you, at this particular time in 1904, Du Bois is an atheist. Him and Unc from the Amin-Ra squad would have got along just fine. But Booker T. Washington, he was a Christian. So him and I would have got along pretty well. I wouldn't have had no problem with his flow. But with Du Bois, I would have been in opposition to things that him and his group was doing simply because they fighting against what we could see today end up becoming most victorious. Not only that, I have the history of W.D. Du Bois admitting that about himself that he was wrong. So just remember around 1960, Du Bois go ahead and becomes a Pan-African and moves over to Ghana, and there his resting place under a Pan-African flag to which he never represented throughout the entirety of his life. And he's given all that credit. But this right here at the heart of the movement, the things he's about to do in 1904, it's just a crying shame. And the reason y'all don't know about this because y'all following the wrong channel. So definitely reach out, send this link out, post this link in your Twitters and in your different Facebook groups, and let's get this thing popping. And I need to see my numbers grow. I can't understand why they can get 10,000 views and we over here struggling with 100 or 2 or 3 or 4. But I ain't gonna worry about that. We're gonna get right into the business. In 1904, Du Bois attends a conference proposed by Washington to try to agree upon certain fundamental principles and to see in what way we understand our misunderstanding each other. This was apparently an effort to draw Du Bois, who had been sliding further towards the views of Trotter and his radicals, into the Tuskegee camp. However, this secret conference held at the Carnegie Hall amounted to little, and if anything, winded up the gap between Washington and Du Bois. The latter found that the Tuskegee influence in the conference and in the Committee of 12 formed shortly after was so considerable, with the vote often going against Du Bois 2-1, that he resigned in the spring of 1905, resolving not to wear Mr. Washington's livery or to put on his collar. At present, I propose to fight the battle to the last ditch. If I fight it, I start alone. This may have been just as well, for the 2 months earlier, Du Bois delivered perhaps his most sketching denunciation to date of the abusive method of Washington in an article entitled Debit or Credit. Du Bois summed up the progress of the black race for 1904, citing in it that the debit column, 3,000 of hush money used to subside the Negroes' press in 5 leading cities. Although no names were mentioned, the implications were painfully clear to the editors of those papers, who was later shown on the unofficial payroll of Tuskegee, and to the Black America as well. One of the papers alluded to, the New York Age, challenged Du Bois to be specific in his charges or stand stigmatized by the African American press as a hysterical busybody. Du Bois' allegations and subsequent resignation from the Committee of 12 slammed the door on any hopes of cooperating with Washington and polarized many of the black race into 2 warring factions. However, until the formation of the NIAGARA movement, the anti-Washington's men would lack effective and organized expression. So here they go. It's 1905. They had met up there in Niagara Falls. Got a bunch of radicals going up against the Tuskegee machine. They're going to get into it. In February of 1905, Trotter confided to Du Bois his desires to see an honest man of the race somehow get together for more concrete defense. And after learning of Du Bois' resignation from Washington's committee, echoed the call of F.L. McGee of St. Paul for the establishment of the National Strategy Board for Defense. Offensive and constructive action. These 3 men, along with Charles Bentley of Chicago, spent the month of April planning a secret meeting to achieve this goal for the summer of 1905, suggesting names of possible invitees and prospective locations, wishing the conference to be kept as confidential as possible. Du Bois carefully screened all recommended names and rejected several as brought and hidebound Washingtonians. He trying to keep away from them guys. But midday, Du Bois happily reported to Trotter that 40 men had answered his call for the resignation and expressed his optimism about the success of the conference. However, even with so many positive responses, there remained the question in the location Of course, the prevailing problem in cost among these places suggested was New York City and Atlantic City. And had not the matter of preference arisen, it seems that the site near Lorain, Ohio, may have been settled upon. Sometime in May, however, Du Bois learned that the Elks Convention to be held in Buffalo, New York during the upcoming summer, and perhaps anticipating, reduced the hotel's rates for the affair. Contracted a friend in Buffalo regarding the prospect. It seems that Du Bois, confident in Buffalo, Edward W. Crosby, must have been responding positively, for the Atlanta professor canceled the arrangements in Ohio for the money's sake, and in early June wrote Trotter, "We shall meet in Buffalo." Circulars to the effect will follow soon. By the time he had reached the decision to meet in Buffalo, Du Bois had received 59 affirmative responses and sent these men bulletin urges them to meet in the vicinity of Buffalo during the week of July 9, 1905, to inaugurate the prominent forward movement. Du Bois quoted the railroad rates as one fare plus $1 for a round trip, and indicated the letters detailing the business method of the conference would soon follow. Okay, now we're going to skip down because they just building in, getting up there to Buffalo. That's where they headed. But see, what's going to happen is when they get to Buffalo, they're going to not give them admittance. That's what's going to force them on their way over there to the Niagara Falls, right? So I'm going to jump down here. Let's see. We see Washington's name. Make sure I ain't skipping nothing that I really want to read, right? Because we ain't trying to read this whole book on here. I know y'all got to go to work someday. Okay. So we're going to skip right here where we see Washington's name pop up. It says, when Washington learned that Talbot was involved, he correctly associated the name with that of a woman his wife knew through the National Association of Colored Women, Mary Burnett Talbot, the spouse of William Talbot. Washington bade his own wife to contact Mrs. Talbot to keep you closely informed about the proceedings and the names of the people connected with the Buffalo meeting next week. Lewis R. Harlan labeled Mary Burnett Talbot a spy, but it is much to the credit of her and her husband that no evidence exists to suggest that they are deliberately relying any information, either directly or indirectly, to Tuskegee. This is the most strongly supported by the fact that Washington had no knowledge of who attended the conference until after it had ended. Information that either Talbot could have supplied easily. In additions, Mary Burnett Talbot would later become the director of the NAACP. You see what's going on? They already formatting the hater squad. This is the hater squad. 1905. Early stages, y'all. And in 1922, would win the organization of the Spine Guard Medal. Now, my next one is going to be about the Spine Guard. See, you got to learn about Joel Spine Guard. He's the one who would come find W.D. Du Bois and put the money behind them to create this NAACP that's supposed to be for the advancement of colored people. But yet, in 100 years, the NAACP don't own one single acre of land, has produced zero products, and the only advancement we done got is our Shakti. I'll be there. That's how it goes. All right now. So it says the Spine Guard Medal for notable achievements in civil rights. Since the goals of the NAACP and its forebearers, the Niagara movement, were very similar, it is doubtful that Mrs. Talbot would have agreed to thwart such ideas. Du Bois arrived in Buffalo in July 905. Now we're gonna skip down. We already know they headed to there. So here I see Washington's name again. We want to kind of catch these parts because this is where it gets interesting, where he pops up. So it says Washington must have acted immediately following Anderson's report from Cosby disclosing the address in the Buffalo. For he sent a week too early Julius R. Cox, a member of his secretarial staff, on a sudden trip to Niagara Falls. Cox found nothing at the given location and returned to his regular job in Boston. In spite of this setback, Washington promptly wired Cox, "See Clifford, plumber, at once. Tell him to go to Buffalo obstinately to attend elk convention, but to report fully what goes on at the meeting and to be held Wednesday and Thursday. Get into the meeting if possible." Clifford H. Plummer was a black lawyer from Boston who began working for Washington in 1903, shortly after serving as a counsel for one of the Boston rioters. In 1904, Plummer was able to gain the confidence of the Trotter and his crowd to learn for their plans of an anti-Washington meeting to be held at Cambridge to protest Tuskegee's own private banquet in the city of the same evening. After alerting Washington to Trotter's design, Plummer destroyed the circulars for the meeting while the other agents managed to convince the owner of the hall in which the meeting was being held to cancel the group's reservations. Now Booker T is getting to work, boy. He is not letting this man get with it, boy. He know exactly what they trying to form. He got spies running around. This shit getting gangster back in the day. Y'all think pit boss be going in. I ain't sent no spies out. I'm sure my little trollers are going to be coming in here pretty soon. Yeah. Joe, cool. I see you in there, brother. All right. Let's get it popping a little bit more. Hold on real quick. Before I do that, I need to just see what we got going. Got a few little sleepy heads still out. We ain't going too far. We just rocking. A little bit more, right? So now we got Clifford Plummer running around spying for Booker T. He trying to get the info on the meeting that's going to be held inside the NIAGARA movement, right? All right, let's get down to some names, right? It says the names given to this new organization was to be the NIAGARA movement. Yet this title was not inspiring during the initial conference. Du Bois had apparently decided upon the names at least 3 weeks in advance when writing the prospective members. This name, however, was approved by at least a majority of those who did attend. The officers of the NIAGARA movement were Du Bois as the general secretary and W.H. Richards as the treasurer. In addition, an executive committee was established to consist of one representative from the state and the district from where the members hailed. And each of these delegates was to help form a state branch and hold regular meetings. Several subcommittees were also formed to deal with the following issues: finances, interstate condition and needs, organization, civil and political rights, legal defense, crime, rescue and reform, economic opportunities, health, education, press and public opinion. That's not a bad list at all, isn't it? That's decent. Minus the civil and political rights. That's what the main focus of it was. And you know, if you're for that, you know, you got to put it on the list. So now let's go down a little further. It says, finally, the NIAGARA movement outlined its principles in bold, uncompromising terms: freedom of speech, an unfeathered and unsubsidized press, manhood suffrage, the abolition of all caste distinctions based simply on race and color, the recognition of the principles of human brotherhood as a practical present creed, a belief in the dignity of labor, united efforts to realize these ideas under a wise and courageous leadership. Mind you, this whole damn thing didn't last 5 years. You know what I'm saying? I think my junior high school basketball team going into high school lasts longer than that. All right, all right. So they formulated their meeting. They got their list down, what they want to be about. Now we're going to see how they get back to this Booker T trying to thwart their efforts. So it says, perhaps the most intriguing facet of Booker T. Washington's effort to thwart this new and organized threat to his leadership was his successful manipulation and censorship of any national news of the National Conference of the Niagara Movement. Lewis R. Harlan suggests the Manning Marable's Du Bois' latest biography agrees that somehow Clifford Plummer was responsible for having the Associated Press, the AP, of Buffalo keep silent about the conference. This claim, however, is based only on Plummer's claim to have gone to the Associated Press to stop the story. All right. It's getting pretty hot in here. They shutting down all propaganda. Booker T with the long arm of Tuskegee, the Tuskegee machine, is handling his business. So let's see what we got. All right. We're gonna while it down to the end, right? It says, I'm reading the last two paragraphs. Let's see if I have to go back. Like I said, folks, I'm just doing a little introduction to information. So you guys are going to have these links, you know, in the description box as soon as I finish. And, you know, you can go right here and read these things in full detail. I'm just having a little discourse with you. So let's close this out, right? It says, in addition to having been a prime position to suppress the news in the conference nationally, it must have been made clear how Cosby felt about the Niagara movement and its aims. As you will note, Anderson wrote Washington they failed to interest Crosby's in the movement, and wishing to strengthen this point, Anderson paraphrased Crosby's sentiments, explaining that the latter's doubt as to the true meaning of their Niagara movement men influence on their honesty and propose. Regardless of his friendship with Du Bois, Crosby apparently neither trusted nor agreed with the movement's goal, so would perhaps have no compunctions about acting against it. Finally, Crosby recorded at the Times will show that on at least one other occasion, he had illegally tampered with incoming Associated Press news, demonstrating that he was in fact capable of occupational improprieties. On September 1903, Anderson was visiting Buffalo with his wife when the story of political interest and importance to him came over the AP wire. Anderson wrote to Washington concerning the story, revealing it was called to my attention by our good friend Crosby, who stopped it from being printed in his paper, The Times, by notifying persons who is not a member of the Associated Press and the News of Corporation in the advance of the publication, and by preventing the story from being printed in the Times. Crosby is indirect violating the two sanctions of Article 8 of the law buys of the Associated Press. So he put an end to that movement. Propaganda is going down. Now you can see where the hatred's coming from. They're bouncing back and forth, right? Okay. So this is just a short introduction. Let's see. I think I better close out with this last paragraph. We might as well close it out, huh? Okay, the most scholars agree that the NIAGARA movement was an important precursor for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and it must be admitted that the previous investigations into the ideas and the actions of the early civil rights movement have been invariably illuminating. What must be pointed out, however, is that the ideological conflicts between W.D. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington caused such a rupture within the black race that the following of each man seemed to devote a disproportionate amount of energy and time in thwarting each other's actions and or platforms rather than following the diligency of their own plans. What seems to have been neglected in the tumult was the common goal of each side, the improvement of the conditions of black people in America. An in-depth investigation of the initial conference of the NIAGARA movement in 1905, in addition to clearing up some of the misconceptions about the events surrounding it, should illustrate just how much time the NIAGARA men spent on ensuring the security and secrecy of the meeting, as well as demonstrating how far Booker T. Washington and his men would go to curtail the efforts of those who threatened their primacy. Had some sort of agreement been reached between Tuskegee and the NIAGARA movement, perhaps the measures of real progress, which both camps adherently desire, might have been achieved for the black race. The result, however, was much bickering and the application of rather Machiavellian methods to promote individual programs. Perhaps it was the black race which was ultimately losers in the battle between Booker T and the NIAGARA movement. Now, I don't know exactly when this particular comment was written, but most definitely all these years that we have to look upon what's going on and understand that we are living in the result of these conflicts that went about. So now you have the death of Booker T. Washington about 10 years later in 1915. Some say he was poisoned, various unusual circumstances around his death. I believe he was poisoned in some type of manner because I have more information that I'm not going to bring to you tonight that suggests that what Booker T was doing was very dangerous and damaging to the white supremacist program that would be fueling this NAACP movement throughout the decades. As we would see just 20 years later, this same W.D. Du Bois would be the thorn in Marcus Garvey's plan, where I can let you see how W.D. Du Bois called on the FBI J. Edgar Hoover of the time to alert him to what Garvey was doing, which in turn J. Edgar Hoover sent in a secret spy named James Wormley. But that's all in the Garvey years. Tonight, this is pre-Garvey, man. It's a whole lot of stuff. And I'm just picking out little hot points just to give you a little bit of information on how these things are, how this Pan-African black nationalist ideology versus a non-economic liberalism and civil rights movement, how the fork in the road of black concepts went in two different directions. I'm assuming if you're living in a condition that you're loving today and you're feeling like this integrationist program is the way to go, then you should be rooting for what W.D. Du Bois was doing and thwarting what Booker T was doing. But if you feel somewhere in your heart that we're undereducated in the STEM and we need to develop an economic independence away from the oppression that black people find in this country, then you should certainly be rooting for Booker T. This is the dilemma that we need to discuss. This is where I come in with what I'm doing with my Fraternal Order of Pan-African Study Group. I'm laying out these facts, not for me to decide, but for you to decide. Just giving you an understanding, because not a lot of people in this conscious so-called movement understands this paradigm. I fight with these guys all the time. And I'd like y'all to understand how far this go back. I can go back before W.D. Du Bois. I can go back to Frederick Douglass and John Brown and what they had to deal with at their time. We can keep going back, and understanding that there are two parallels rolling through history. And one day we got to decide, are we going to continue on in the march of an integrationist society where white folks and black folks are going to treat each other fairly in every aspect of life? Or are we going to decide that we're going to separate and set up something different in any kind of fashion that we could propose? One day, a conclusion has to be met. A resolution has to be drawn. And in some kind of fashion or form, we have to head down the road of what we going to do and quit fighting amongst each other and do it. Now, we definitely can't all unite. There's just no way that we can all unite, because we don't all have the same ideas of where we want to go. As I disagree with the writer of that page, stating that they could have worked together. You can't work together when one group wants to integrate and the other group wants to form their own nation. Well, that's what we have today. We got some black folks who are well-to-do, they're content, and they're pushing the program of integration. They're supporting every civil rights movement ever. They're down for welfare. They're down for child support agencies. They're down for Planned Parenthood. They're down for gay rights. They're down for everything that integration presents. Then you have another side of the table who's upset at everything. They're upset about police killing them. They're upset about the prison industrial complex. They're upset about mistreatment. They're upset about gays infiltrating the community. They're upset about the biological warfare that's going on. They're upset about a lot of things. And so they're yelling out a cry for black power, a cry for black nationalism. Then you got the white man who will shut down your YouTube station if somebody call them in a heartbeat. They're always fighting against the program. They're sitting around giving out awards, the Spine Guard Medal Award, to every black man who will step up and propagate integration and push for white girls teaching black children how to grow up and be black, how to grow up and think black, how to grow up and think for what direction blacks should be fighting for. We're kind of pushing each other in the wrong direction when it comes to education. I'm an advocate of this STEM program. I believe that we should all teach our children this program. I believe that you should know this information I'm teaching before you reach college. And just that alone will strengthen the minds of the children. It's not that hard. They got code words for the school. They call them magnet schools. Magnet schools are STEM schools. Take a look in your area and find out where magnet schools are located. And wherever you see black folks concentrated, you will not see any magnet schools. They'll be on the borderlines or knee deep inside of the white communities, because the white people believe in teaching their children the STEM program. Asians love the STEM program. Jewish people love the STEM program. MIT is a STEM college, STEM Institute, Massachusetts Institution of Technology. And it's one of the greatest colleges in America. One of the only colleges that could develop a nuclear missile defense system. because it's a technical understanding. Very difficult to get in that school. Tuskegee College is a technical institute. One of the very first that was developed for black people in order to build self-awareness, self-independence. And so I'm pushing it. I'm pushing it until you guys understand it. Until you guys start to push it. Until you start understanding why we do this. Pan-African ain't about a red, black, and green flag. That's Marcus Garvey era. We ain't in the Marcus Garvey era yet. Ain't nobody running around with no black flag on. Ain't nobody pumping up no fists. I'm going to show y'all how the black fist is associated to a socialist movement, and no black nationalists would ever hold it up because they don't recognize the socialist concept. Socialist concept comes out of Karl Marx and Engels. They developed that coming out of Russia for revolutionary wars that they was having. And that ideology would come over here to America in like 1920 with the American Blood Brotherhood. Black organization, socialists, radicals. They was down for nationalism, but they were neo-nationalism. And so this is the purpose. This is the reason why I cover this over and over and over and over. It just takes time. It takes time to get y'all to really get behind what the real is. But see, I'm being thrown by these so-called comedic RBGs who ain't gonna teach you none of this because they learned from SETI and Dr. Ben. Now see, when I look at these guys that they say they learn from, I see no STEM education coming out of none of their leaders. I see the history of Kemet. That ain't got nothing to do with the program. But they want to push Kemet. They want to tell you about the Metu Neter, but can't take that Metu Neter and teach no mathematics with it. They can't teach no science with it. They can't teach no engineering with it. They probably can't even teach agriculture with it. But we can in plain English. This is your brother, man. The digital pit boss. One day, y'all gonna understand what I'm saying. Y'all can get out, get up, and get something. So I hope you enjoyed this little lecture. I'm gonna put these links in there for you. Feel free to comment on the videos. Give me any kind of ideas you like, any directions y'all like me to go. If you want to come on the show, you got anything you want to say, I'm always down to support you guys. If you got websites, links, products you're selling, anything, let me know about it. I'll talk about it on the show. I'll try to get the people to support what you're doing. And in turn, we'll be having a cooperative economics, as my channel is based on cooperative economics. And if you're down with me, if you're feeling what I'm saying, you really need to contact me and figure out a way we could develop. I'm wide open. You can catch me at 99lightyears@gmail.com. That's 99lightyears@gmail.com. LIGHTYEARS@gmail.com. Touch your boy with a message. I promise you I hit back. I don't take all day with it. And we could build. So I hope you enjoyed that little bit of NIAGARA movement. This is your boy, the Digital Pit Boss. See your goals to the end. And when you see it, and believe it, bet it all. Enjoy your night.